All right.
I thought it might be fun to chat about, since it's the new year. I'm not sure if you make resolutions or what your planning process looks like around the new year, whether you have one, whether you look forward to the year ahead, but it's kind of like a nice natural line in the sand to look forward and see what's coming up. And I'm just curious, like, do you have any resolutions that you set? Do you have a planning process you go through?
I do. I've worked in journalism for years, and I'm doing a lot less of it now. But I have probably written like 24 stories on how to set New Year's resolutions.
It's like
right?
the standard go-to piece every year. You
It's
crank
the
out the
standard
same.
every year. I can sell it somewhere, and so I've interviewed just anybody who has a theory on New Year's resolutions and all that, and so some of the stuff that I've taken that I actually use is that I set quarterly goals.
Okay.
So not saying New Year's resolutions for the whole of 2017, but I'm going to set quarterly goals for each of the quarters of 2017. And the good thing about that is, the problem with many New Year's resolutions is there's lots of things we want to do, but if you focus on all of them at once, like you won't get to all of them because you're like, oh, well, should I be, focusing on coming up with a new book idea or decluttering my house or reading one book a week or whatever it is. Like there's all sorts of different plausible resolutions. And so you're like, well, it helps to be able to say, okay, I have a time for that. And now it's not that time. Like I'll be doing that in Q2, not Q1. Don't even need to think about it, but I know it will happen. So there's that. And then the other thing I do is I set them in 3 categories. So for each quarter, I do one career goal, one relationships goal, and one self goal.
Okay.
So that also means that you have a more balanced life because those are the major spheres. And so I can think about, well, I'm trying to be 50% through with my new book that I'm writing in the first quarter. I'm also going to devote some time to mapping out my children's summer schedule and all the
sounds fun.
summer camps that must be coordinated. Because if I do it in January, February, it won't be a nightmare.
Yeah.
But if I leave it till May, nothing's happening.
Yeah, nothing's happening.
It's over and gone. That ship has sailed. I won't be in the camps I want to be in. And then for self, I'm doing a speed goal with running, a goal with speed work.
Cool.
Which is something I know I should do and don't do enough of. So anyway, those are for Q1, and then I can move on to new things in Q2. And it's not that I won't be still working on the book, and it won't be that I won't still be running, because I will, but then there will be other things that I'll be focused on then. How about you?
Now, do you
What
set
do?
like the 4 quarterly goals right at the start of the year?
Yeah.
Okay.
But here's the thing. I am incredibly flexible about
Well, you have
goals.
to be. Yeah.
You have to be, because it's certainly, setting something for Q4, who knows? The plans go awry for good reasons and for bad reasons. So it's really highly speculative. And if I decide it's something I don't want to do, well, I'm the one who set the goal. So it's not like
You're not accountable. You're not accountable to anybody but yourself. Yeah. This is why like 5-year plans bug me so much, because people think that they can plan for 5 years down the line, but we can't even figure out what we're doing tomorrow so much of the time. And the things that we should be worrying about that'll get in the way of our plans, it doesn't occur to us to worry about in the first place. And I think it's Sheryl Sandberg. I get her name mixed up all the time with Sharon Salzberg, who's a meditation teacher that I love and follow.
Very different people, but yes.
Meditation, Facebook, not quite in the same mental categories, but she advocates for an 18-month plan, which I love, because it's kind of like the 4 quarterly goals, a bit kind of 6 months more than that, but it accommodates for all the risk that chances are we're going to encounter. Because if we can plan out our life 5 years down the line, either we're not accounting for the risk, in my opinion, or we're not doing work that's interesting enough that would make setting goals worthwhile. We're playing it too safe, in other words. But the categorization, it kind of reminds me, I think I have 7 categories that I use to break down the different goals that I set. And every year I try to set as few goals as I possibly can. Because every week,
a 7 even seems like a lot to me, but
man, yeah.
You know.
Well, I try to set, like, out of all of these spots, you know, where do I want to spend most of my time, my energy? I'll try to recount them, because I review them every week, kind of my hot spots, to consider how each of the areas of my life are going. There's mind, and you know, you can kind of group these under yours as well. We could probably come up with some sort of diagram where they filter into each other. But mind, body, relationships, money, work, fun, and emotions. And so cultivating good, and you know, I also choose, and I found this to be the case when writing the productivity project, is, you know, sometimes you have to tilt, you know, so you overinvest in your career at the expense of fun, or at least that was the case in my case. But yeah, it's kind of the same system where, you know, what's kind of one or two goals out of all of these categories that I want to make, you know, this week, this quarter, this year. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's not a problem to set 5-year intentions, in the sense that many people like to have big pictures of their lives, or even sort of thinking about, you know, what's going to be on your tombstone or anything like that. It's just, you have to recognize that so much of life is unknowable, and that life probably has possibilities you cannot even imagine. It may have some challenges you can't even imagine too. And so as long as you're flexible with it, there's no reason not to say, you know, here's things I would like to do over the course of my life, or in the next 5 years, what have you. But
and we definitely have time for it all.
A little less rigidity.
And we definitely have time for it all. It was funny. I was watching your TED Talk, which, if you're watching this now, you should pause this video and check out Laura's new TED Talk.
Go watch my TED Talk.
Just Google Laura Vanderkam TED Talk, because it's amazing. You know, you're talking about making time for this stuff. We really have more time than you think. Would you be able to share that story with anybody that's watching? I forget the exact story, but it was a lady you were chatting with when you were writing I Know How She Does It, who I think her water heater broke.
Yes. So this was I had hundreds of people keep track of their time for a week. This particular woman had gone out for a Wednesday night for something. Comes home to find her water heater's broken. Any homeowners watching this know the possibility of this. It's just a disaster, right? Like, they warn you to replace your water heater every 12 years or something. If you don't do it ahead of the time when it malfunctions badly. So water all over her basement. Dealing with the immediate aftermath that night. Next day, plumbers. Day after that, professional cleaning crew. Deal with the ruined carpet. So there's this being recorded on her time log, and winds up taking 7 hours of her week. And so the way I always explain this to people, like, I get contacted by magazines all the time. They're doing stories on how to help our readers find an extra hour in the day, which is like finding 7 hours in the week, right? And yet this woman wasn't like following some plan to find 7 hours in her week by shaving bits of time here and there. She found 7 hours in her week because there's water all over her basement, and she has to deal with the fallout from this happening. And so if you had asked her at the start of the week, well, you know, the example that I use, like, could you find 7 hours to train for a triathlon? She's going to be like, no, I cannot find 7 hours to train. No way. I can't find 7 hours to, you know, read 250 pages in War and Peace or whatever it is
I'm
you
so
want to
busy.
do.
I'm
so busy. And yet, when she had to find these 7 hours, she had to find an extra hour in the day. She did. And so what this teaches us is that time is extremely elastic. Mm-hmm. And when we say we don't have time for something, it just means it's not immediately a priority. And maybe there's a good reason for that, right? Maybe it's that you have water all over your basement, so the other things are not a priority because you got to get to the water all over your basement.
Yeah.
But it might behoove us over time to figure out if we can treat the things that do matter to us as the equivalent of this broken water heater. How can we pretend that the things that matter to us are like this giant puddle of water on the basement floor, and we've got to get to them. We've got to get to them now. And everything else will wait, and we will deal with that, and we will make sure it happens.
Yeah, I found this very recently because I've fallen into that trap before, and people think we're productivity experts and we got this stuff down, but we really don't.
No.
And I fall into this trap all the time, thinking I'm so busy, right? Because you look at how much you do, and you do quite a bit over the course of the day. But I thought, I haven't really done anything to invest in a hobby recently. I see the piano behind you, which is kind of the cue for me to think about this. And I was looking at that my 7 hotspots that week, and I looked at the fun bit of it, and I thought, man, I haven't really had much fun over the last several months. I've been so immersed in thinking about how busy I was, and so that was the moment I decided to buy a piano. I don't know if you can. It's always
risky
in there
somewhere. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
It's heavily
so
obscured.
I wonder how many productivity writers have instruments in their offices.
Maybe, what if this is like one of those undiscovered things, and like every productivity writer happens to have a piano behind them?
A piano behind them that you can see if you look closely in Skype calls. I put it there thinking it would help me practice more, play more. And I do play some, not nearly as much as I probably should. And humorously, one of my quarterly goals for 2016, I wanted to learn to play Linus and Lucy, the song from Peanuts, Christmas, on the piano. And I went so far as to order the sheet music from Amazon. It got lost in transit.
Of course.
Never showed up.
It got lost in transit, Laura. It got lost in transit.
Yes, I lost in transit. Life got busy. I didn't follow up. I didn't even go get a refund or anything. So somewhere in the universe, my copy of Linus and Lucy is out there. It is not in my house. So I 2016 is over now. That goal did not happen. Big fail. Want to know? Productivity writers have our goal setting fails like anyone else.
What percent? What percent of the intentions you set at the start of the year do you think you keep?
I do keep most of them.
Yeah.
So it would definitely be over 50%. Mostly because I feel like I know myself pretty well.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to set a goal that I would never keep. Like if you said stop drinking coffee, I mean that just I would have to have like some condition where my liver would fail if I drank coffee in order for me to actually be motivated to do that. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to, I've even realized like certain kinds of exercise I won't do. I'll run, but I don't really like strength training. I'm not going to do it. No. I recognize that. So it's, I should, I don't. But then there's other intentions that I feel like I've gotten at least close to the original aim.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm willing to be a bit more flexible on that. Like I set myself a goal to make it through this certain speed treadmill workout that I found in a women's fitness magazine.
Yeah.
I did not make it through it. Like I got close and I did get much faster in the course of doing it. So the fact that I didn't make it through that final 30 seconds at that top speed ever in the course of trying it. Oh well.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff I did do, but then the thing is, like you also get things that happen that you didn't foresee. So I set a goal to hit a certain dollar figure for speaking in 2016, and I hit it. Yay! But that wound up being far less interesting to me than my unpaid TED Talk.
Yeah.
That. Then getting viewed 1 million times, like that is a goal I didn't even think to set. Like it would, and I wouldn't have had any way to guarantee that would happen either. Like, I don't think they respond well to you, like pestering them to ask them to give the TED Talk.
Hey, can I do a TED Talk? Can I do a TED Talk?
Okay, can I do it? Can I do it? And that came out of something random, which is that I had been tracking my time for a year, and I just posted on my blog, like, I don't think anyone else is going to care at all about this, so I'm just going to write on my blog about what I did for the year. And randomly, somebody had forwarded it to an editor at the New York Times who wrote me and said, hey, would you possibly be interested in writing about it for us? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So I did. And then the TED thing came out of that, out of them reading the New York Times. And so it's like neither of those would I ever have thought to do and to set as a goal.
Yeah.
But they wound up being professional highlights for the year. So I guess it's just, you have intentions and things matter to you, but then other stuff can come up that could transcend anything you thought to set, and that can be good too.
Being flexible with those things. Yeah, it's funny when I look back on my career so far, the things that kind of get in the way of what you intend to accomplish, just as it doesn't occur to you to worry about those things in the first place. So often the best things that happen to you, it didn't occur to you to anticipate. So when my productivity project was finished, it started as a blog. I didn't even have an inkling of a thought of an idea that it would turn into a book, as kind of the end game, but being open to the
Although
things...
you may be the only person to do a project like that, where you do a different thing every week that doesn't intend it to come into a book. I thought that was like
maybe that's the reason why it did, because, you focus less on the end goal and just becoming immersed in the process itself. And, you end up loving the process, and that turns into a better goal at the end. And maybe that's another thing too, is you got to love the process of the goals that you set, because if you hate the process, do you really like the goal? One of the things that I tried to do in the project was waking up at 5:30 every morning for 3 months. And, I struggled to shoehorn this habit into my life. And, but I had the routine that these productivity dreams that so many of us have are made of. Like, I woke up at 5:30, I made a nice coffee. I woke up at 10 today, by the way, because I work from 10 to 6 now, and to give you a sense of my biological rhythms. To make a coffee, meditate, read the New York Times before the rest of the world even woke up. But then I realized that I absolutely hated the ritual. I loved the idea of the end goal, but the process to get there really wasn't worth it. It was just setting yourself up to fail if you don't like the process, I guess.
I get some of this a lot. I mean, I wrote a whole book called What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast that looked at morning routines. And I would write about people getting up at 5 a.m. to, run a marathon or something like that. And so people often think that I do that. And one article about the book said, she rises at 5 a.m. to greet the rosy-fingered dawn. And one of my friends forwarded this to me saying, I know what finger you're greeting the rosy dawn with, because I am never up at 5 a.m. on purpose. Unfortunately, I have a toddler who wants to do great things before breakfast, and he can't do those by himself yet. I hope to train him to turn on the TV by himself. Is the most successful toddlers, I don't know, but at the moment he lacks the ability to turn on Dora the Explorer by himself. So somebody's getting up with him and feeding him and all that good stuff. And I can trade off with my husband, but still every other morning getting up at 5 a.m. just sucks. I hate it. And so that's what I'm doing before breakfast these days. I tell myself it's a phase of life. He will grow up. He will develop the ability to play on his own, get his own breakfast, turn on the TV if he's up early in the morning. For now, I'm just trying to deal with it as I can, enjoy the moments that I can. But I totally agree with you that we will not stick with something we hate, and or at least have a compelling reason to do. And so much of what we do is about seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. And I think those of us who come across as disciplined in some regards, we may be, but it may also be that the things that give us pleasure are things that turn out to be, habits that other people might want to have. I mean, I genuinely like running. It's something I really enjoy doing. And so to me, it's not like, I have this amazing self-discipline. It's just that I enjoy doing it. Whereas if somebody told me I needed to practice French daily for an hour, I'd be like, no. No, I will not be doing that.
That kind of speaks to the power of doing work that we love too. Like people look at folks it's hard to know what people are like because we only know the stories of them that people tell. But somebody like Elon Musk, we imagine that he's this superstar who works, 16 hours a day and is hyper-focused throughout the entire process. But the more we do work that we love and the more we do things that we love that are connected to things we deeply value, the less we need to regulate our own behavior to focus on it in the moment. And this is why, the most productive people are the ones who love their work, because it's hard to invest in your productivity if you don't care about the work that you want to be productive on in the first place. And I forget what the name of the study I was reading the other day was, but they found that, and it seems like such an obvious finding. It's like, oh, drinking more water makes us healthier, like one of those kind of obvious findings. But the people who love their work more need to take fewer breaks because they expend less mental energy regulating their own behavior. And that probably speaks to setting goals that connect with us on that deeper level as well. So waking up at 5:30, it's kind of this, you have with goals like this sepia tone fantasy of being this person who wakes up ultra early and meditates and everything like that, and who has a rocking six-pack by summer and all these different things. But, if we don't care about these things, it's hard to care about important goals in the immediate term, because in the immediate term, we don't want to become vice president or have a six-pack. We want to play hooky and grab a cheeseburger. But if we don't care about them in the medium and the long term as well, what's the point of really making these? If we just like the idea of these changes more than we like the process and the deeper meaning behind the end result.
Yeah. Totally agree. So if you were going to tell somebody your biggest productivity tip,
oh man,
what would that be?
Well, I think, man, people, and the new year kind of has me thinking about it in this way. In addition to setting intentions, which is kind of, intentionality and this deliberateness kind of lies at the heart of productivity anyway. But I'd kind of set productivity aside for just a second, because, we so often focus on how productive we are and what we do, as opposed to the results that productivity leads to. And, of course, I've primed myself to give this answer, because before we were chatting, before I was watching your TED Talk, I was reading over my accomplishments list for last year, for 2016. And, you've probably heard of the Zygarnik effect before, where we remember the incomplete things that we haven't done more than the things that we have done. But every year, I keep an accomplishments list of the big kind of milestones that I ship, the big things I accomplish in my personal life and in my work life. And I was looking over that and kind of pat myself on the back. And I know this sounds kind of self-congratulatory, but I think it's important that we do congratulate ourselves,
Yes.
Look at the results that our productivity leads to. And I think it was, 15, 20 items long, but it just kind of got me thinking in that mindset. It's like, wow, I'm grateful for the people that I get a chance to work with. I'm grateful for my team. I'm grateful that I've invested in my productivity. I'm grateful that the goals I set last year panned out. Maybe 60, maybe 70% of them panned out. Some of them didn't, but you remember the things you do accomplish, more when you're done.
65% is good. Yeah, 65% would be totally good.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe that's the one. What about you? Which one would you give?
So I always tell people that if they want to spend their time better, keeping track of their time is probably the first step.
Sorry, we just had a connection issue. We're back. I think we're back, and we're strong.
I think we're back.
The question that we left off at was, if you had to give one piece of productivity advice, which one would you give to folks?
And so what I would do is tell people to keep track of how you're spending your time. Because if you want to spend your time better, figuring out how you're spending it now is a good place to start. I mean, You might say, well, I want to exercise more. Well, if you don't know how many times you're exercising or how long, how do you know if you're doing it more? If you want to get better sleep, again, knowing how much you're sleeping, as opposed to stories you might be telling yourself about how much you sleep, or I want to work less. Well, how much are you working now? If you don't know for sure, you won't know if you hit it. Yeah. So even just keeping track of your time for a week is probably ideal. A day or two can give you a pretty good picture of your life, but weekends are part of life too. And so often when people track their time, they don't even think to do the weekend. And yet there's 60 hours between 6 p.m. Friday, 6 a.m. Monday. You probably want to know where that time goes if you are looking at your life holistically. So I'd say do that. Of course, the one problem is most people don't actually want to do that. I have found
it's a tedious process, isn't it?
It's tedious. And there are time tracking apps that make it slightly easier, but I would say it's not that tedious. Like I've been tracking my time for about 21 months now, I guess.
Nonstop?
And I just do.
Are you serious?
Nonstop, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know how I've spent every half hour for the past 21 months. If anyone wants to like grab a drink with me and hear about that, it'll be all sorts of fun.
Yeah.
But it's not that tedious. I just write it down on a spreadsheet in half-hour blocks. I check in maybe 3 times a day and write what I've done since the last check-in. I can go as long as 24 hours now and remember it, so I don't have to check in constantly. And I find that I'm still learning stuff about how I spend my time, and I'm still making changes based on that. Like I know now that I don't work nearly as many hours as I thought I did. And that's kind of interesting to me because I make fun of other people for overestimating how much they work.
Yeah.
And yet I do it too. I thought I worked a certain amount because I had tracked my time for weeks in the past, but it turns out I'd chosen very specific weeks, which were weeks that looked as I wished to show the world what I work like. So,
well, you mentioned at the start that, you know, with the lady you surveyed that ran into trouble with her hot water heater, how there's no typical week. What would you say to somebody who says, you know, I don't have a typical week, I'll just do it next week? Is there a typical week?
No, there are no typical weeks. And I would say that it's actually that atypicality in our picture of what a typical week is that is what sets us awry and giving us a false picture of our lives. So all the time whenever I'm doing like corporate workshops and have people keep track of their time for a week, and I have like a couple people do it so we can discuss it, you know, inevitably somebody will get back to me and be like, well, I was going to start Monday, but you know, my car broke down Monday. And so I only worked a half day. So I'm going to start over on Tuesday, or I'm going to start next week. I'm like, well, you can, that's fine. But unless you think something like that will never happen again in your life, I would propose that having a week where you are not perfectly at work all the time, it may be more typical than a week where you are perfectly at work the whole time. And, you know, we have even a picture of a perfect work day. Like, oh, let's say I work 8 to 6. It's like, oh, but there was traffic and I got in a little bit late on Thursday, or, you know, I left early on Friday. A lot of people do that. Or I had a dentist appointment on Monday. The next thing you know, it's not 8 to 6. And there's quite a bit of time that was out of that. And so in your mind, you worked 50 hours a week, but when you actually recorded, it was more like 42. And that's a difference. I mean, that is a serious difference. And it's not that you're wasting the 8 hours that you thought you were working. There's just stuff that comes up. And so that's where one of those gaps between perception and reality comes from.
Yeah. What do you think a good place to start with that is to track your time for even just one day to start? Is there a template that somebody
even just
can
one
use?
day to start is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can just write it down in a notebook. I mean, I use a spreadsheet, which is very just, you know, hours of the day by half hours along the left side. So 5 to 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5 a.m. to 5 a.m. And then over the top, the days of the week. So it's just a spreadsheet.
let me get this right. You have, for all this time, you have data for how you spent every half hour of your life?
Yep.
Wow.
I guess I'm a time management freak. I don't know. I mean, I hope to use something. I got some stuff out of the first year, and I'm going to have a second year soon. I hope to compare the two, see how life changes and how it doesn't. And,
what amazing data. That's incredible.
Maybe. I mean, it's kind of narcissistic, but that's all right.
No, not at all. It's I love it. It's amazing.
You know, I think it has another purpose too, which is that it serves as a bit of a journal of my life at this point. And I've tried to keep journals, and I have a journal that I only write occasionally, and I tend to write about my various gripes and stuff in the journal. So hopefully somebody will just, if I die suddenly, they'll just burn that.
What grinds Laura's gears? That's what the journal
grinds
is.
my gears, like what I'm mad about today. And so, whereas the time log is more dispassionate, it just says what I did.
Yeah.
And so it has a good, you know, record of what life is like in this phase of life where I've got 4 small children and all the stuff that's going on with them, and craziness that life sort of is. And so now I have a record of it.
That's amazing. I think that's that's awesome. I hope this conversation will help folks out and meeting their goals. I think we've given people more than enough to
You've heard more than enough from us.
reveal more than enough about our piano playing abilities,
or lack thereof.
The turtle. I think the turtle got a little reference.
The turtle got in there. That's
it's always an important bit. That was fun.